Hi, and welcome to our module on CW Suite reports and analysis. And today we're focusing on the Matrix Manager. Matrix Manager is one of the components of the CW Suite whose primary purpose is to visualize associations. And in addition to visualizing the associations, you can see where the gaps lie, whether they're real or modeled, meaning you are missing information in your model. You can view impact analysis on any object in your model per its associations. You can create RACI, CRUD, or any other matrix type desired. Visualize relationships between things like roles and organizations, systems and technologies, data and process, etc. And you can also view and update object properties as the matrix is a live modeling environment. Here are a few matrix examples. There's the RACI matrix. Here is a CRUD matrix. And then we have a quality of service matrix and a service contract matrix. So all of these have a vertical and a horizontal. So you have the columns and the rows, and in the middle you have intersections, and the intersections are the associations between objects, which sometimes have information and sometimes it's really just an X. All of these are examples where we are actually checking information about the associations in one way or another. The way you go about creating a matrix is a wizard-driven approach. So once you choose the model you're working in, you would go ahead and click File, New Matrix. And when you get to the screen, you get to choose whether or not you will be using a template. If you use a template, your rows and columns are predefined. Don't forget to give your matrix a name. You have to give it some sort of name that makes sense. You'll see the row object is predefined when it's a template-driven approach, and the column object is also predefined. In this particular template, because it's for a RACI matrix, we also have intersection cell values chosen and defined. If you've chosen to create a matrix based on a template, you can actually see the intersection cell values may be chosen based on the template you selected. In this particular instance, we chose the RACI matrix template, and so we can see the properties: responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. You can see the way the rules are applied here, so use on and off switch, and then the displayed letters. The displayed letters are RACI. And then once we've gone through those steps, we need to actually insert some content. So the fastest way to do that is by flooding rows and columns. When you flood rows and columns, you get to choose how to select that information. So on the left, we're choosing processes on diagram and process purchase order because this is a RACI matrix for the process purchase order diagram. And when we flood the columns, we choose to show associated roles. So what that means is the matrix algorithm will go through, find all the processes on the process purchase order diagram, and then it will display the associated roles. And then if there's any RACI information, that will be displayed as well. So this is the result. The result shows you the roles at the top, processes across the side, so those are your rows, and then RACI information is in the middle. When you're dealing with matrices like RACI or any other kind, you can enable consistency options to highlight gaps or to display information that you think is missing. One of the things you can do once you've created a matrix is to enable business rules, which in Matrix Manager are called consistency options. So what you can do is you can actually go into the Tools menu and turn on consistency options and choose which ones you would like to display. In this case, we've said that a value of property type responsible must exist for every column. And what that will show us is any matrix cell that doesn't have a value of R responsible. So any column that doesn't have an R. So in this case, what it's showing me is that sales manager is not responsible for anything, and the accountant isn't responsible for anything. And you can also do it the other way. You could say, make sure that every row has someone responsible for it. So then you would have someone responsible for all the processes, and you would have completely different results if that was the case. Now, what we'll do is we'll do a simple exercise in the matrix. You can see how simple it is to create a matrix. We'll do one without a template. In our EA Foundation sample model, we'll choose organizations and processes, and then we'll adjust the rows and columns. In order to do that, we launch the case-wise matrix component. And when we do File New, we'll follow the same exact steps that were just outlined in the screenshot. We're not using a template, and we'll just say this is an exercise organization process matrix. And we can choose if we want the processes to be rows or organizations. I'm going to choose organizations, kind of like a swim lane. And then for the second portion, we can choose something that's associated to organizations. In my case, I will choose processes, hit next. I don't want any intersection cell values. It's not a RACI matrix. It's just a simple matrix, so I want to see simple X's on my screen. When I click Finish, it gives me a blank space where I don't have any rows or columns yet. So what I need to do is flood. I'm going to flood my rows. And for the sake of this exercise, I'm simply going to bring all the organizations that are in the model. And then we can do the same thing and bring all the processes that are in the model. And now you can actually see if there are some steps that don't have any associations. The fastest way to see if something doesn't have associations is to go to Tools, Consistency Options, and see that there must be an entry for every row and every column. So that means something must be intersected. And that shows you all the red X's where there are no associations. Either the processes don't have one or the organizations don't have one. And before we finish this exercise, we can also come in to auto fit rows and columns, and that will go through and just make things fit really nicely. And this is a nice and easy way to display a matrix, especially if you're going to show this to someone else, not just use it as a modeling space. And keep in mind that this is a place where you can go in to create associations. So for instance, if step 1 is being done by Sales Canada, I can simply double click on that cell and hit OK, and that will now associate those two to one another in my repository, so not just here. And let's do another example of those. So let's say manage customer relationship. As you can see, has no associations. And so let's find someone who would manage the customer relationship. So here we have sales rep. And another way I can create an association is just by hitting the X on my keyboard. So you can't see me do something, but that's creating the same kind of association. And here, let's do work step 4 for UK support. I can also right-click and do properties. That's the same thing as double-clicking and hitting OK. So of course, the fastest way is to just hit X on your keyboard. And if these are the correct associations, this is a really easy way for you to make kind of these gaps go away. And just to summarize, with the matrix, you're able to not only visualize your associations, you can also see where the gaps may be, whether real or modeled. You can do impact analysis, create matrices that are RACI or CRUD or service-oriented, application architecture-oriented, really whatever is required for your purpose. You can visualize relationships between the objects like roles and organizations, and you can make new associations there. And you can also view any properties of your objects. You can later figure out if the associations should exist or should not. Thank you so much for your attention.